Hello, everybody. This is Pascal from Neutrality Studies, and today I'm talking again to Dr. Alfred de Zayas, a professor at the Geneva School of Diplomacy who used to work as a senior lawyer in the office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights and later became the first UN independent expert on international order. Alfred, welcome back.
Thanks, Pascal, for inviting me, and sorry for my voice, which I have a frog in my throat.
Thank you very much for doing the interview anyway, even though you are a little bit under the weather. But I really wanted to ask you, we are seeing so much norm breaking of the United States of America, of which you're also a citizen of, among other places you're hailing from. But what do you think that this current environment in which the United States just kills people, civilians on the high seas in front of Venezuela in the Caribbean, where the United States has renamed its Ministry of Defense to Ministry of War, where the US just like goes amok basically and breaks so many rules, which is so long standing and so well defined that I just wonder if this doesn't have an impact on international law itself. What are your views?
Well, international law is valid. The United Nations Charter continues in its validity. What concerns me is the silence from London and Paris and Berlin. I mean, we're supposed to be the guarantors of international law. I mean, everything goes back to the League of Nations. Everything goes back to the foundation of the United Nations. And those countries that were carrying the responsibility to watch over the implementation of international law are failing. Certainly, the politicians have failed famously. On the other hand, if you look at the Human Rights Council and the special procedures, you have had the majority of the special rapporteurs come out and condemned all of these actions by the United States. Obviously, these are extrajudicial executions, but it was not just the rapporteur on extrajudicial executions that has condemned the actions of the U.S. government, but it was he and almost everybody else that joined in the press release. The same thing goes at the time of the U.S. bombardment of Iran in June. The same thing goes for this attempt to sidestep international law and imposing a dictated peace on Hamas and establishing, an administration. That's all outside the United Nations system. And I remind my students and my listeners always that the United Nations Charter is the primary treaty. And according to Article 103, the so-called supremacy clause, if there is any conflict between a treaty that the United States or any other country enters into, say the Treaty of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or the Treaty of Maastricht of the European Union, the Treaty of Lisbon of the European Union. If there is any inconsistency or conflict, it is the United Nations Charter that has precedence. So all of the treaties subsequent to the adoption of the UN Charter must conform with the UN Charter. We have a consistent jurisprudence, judgments and advisory opinions of the International Court of Justice that confirm that. So in the International Court of Justice, when it finally comes down with its judgment on the South Africa against Israel case, of course, it has no choice. It has to find that genocide has occurred. The International Court of Justice could not ignore all the reports submitted by the rapporteurs on Palestine. I'm talking about John Dugard and Richard Falk and Michael Link, and of course Francesca Albanese. And they cannot ignore the United Nations Independent Investigative Commission on Palestine that was headed by none other than the High Commissioner for Human Rights, former High Commissioner Navi Pillay, with my friend also Milun Kotari from India as one of the members of the commission. Well, they reported to the Human Rights Council on the 16th of September of this year. And the report, a 72-page report, very detailed, proves that it is genocide without any doubt. So the International Court of Justice is not going to go against them. The International Court of Justice is going to confirm what is already documented in hundreds of reports, not only of the Human Rights Council, but also of DESA and of the UNDP and of UNRWA, and all the statements of the directors of UNRWA and of the Committee on the Inalienable Right of the Palestinians to Self-Determination, and the Special General Assembly Committee on Israeli Practices. So the International Court of Justice is not going to go against them. But we do have a problem of credibility of the whole system of international law when you have no enforcement. Enforcement is and remains the key to the authority of any institution. If you have a court, a tribunal, a commission that issues decision after decision, and then those decisions are being ignored, you do have a problem. It's a systemic problem. But here, my hope actually is in this gradual development that we have been observing over the last 5-10 years, that the global South, otherwise known as the global majority, is not accepting anymore the leadership of the United States. As a matter of fact, Trump is accelerating the destruction of the unipolar fantasy that the United States nurtured since Francis Fukuyama's preposterous book, The End of History. I mean, this triumphalist idea that our so-called liberal democracies, which are not even democracies, because the disconnect between Trump and the American people, the disconnect between Starmer and the Brits, and between Macron and the French, and between Merz and the Germans, the disconnect is almost total. I mean, they're living in parallel worlds. But in any event, the West has accelerated its own decline, and it is the global South that is going to gradually take over. I mean, whether we like it or not, I mean, China is a powerhouse. So is India. And they are not going along with the orders coming from Washington. So Washington is hurting itself by acting in this completely Wild West manner, in which basically we are outlaws. We think we can get away with it because who's going to punish the United States? Well, yes, there is a very easy way to punish the United States. If countries come to their senses, they will not buy any more American weapons, American missiles, American drones, American tomahawks, F-35s, F-16. They will not buy any more Boeing. They will not buy any more American cars, American trucks, American Caterpillars, and we can do, that is, the global South can do enormous damage to the American economy simply by not buying American products. I mean, Russian weapons are extremely proficient. Weapons being produced in China and in North Korea are extremely proficient. So if you think that you need more weapons, and to be honest, we don't need more weapons. I want demilitarization. I want demilitarization for development. I want a reorientation of military first economies into human security economies, which can be done. I wrote a report about it for the Human Rights Council back in 2014. So if countries were to decide the U.S. is at war with international law, the U.S. is at war with the United Nations, so we're going to isolate the United States commercially. We're not going to deal with them. The same thing goes with Israel. Israel is out of control. Israel is a terrorist state. Israel is a genocidal state. There's nothing worse than committing genocide. Therefore, not only should diplomatic relations be broken with Israel, but also commercial relations. Don't buy or sell to Israel. It's a question of organizing resistance. It's a question of taking the leadership. And the leadership could be taken by the BRICS movement, could be taken by Brazil and South Africa and India and China. And let us see how now Ukraine plays out with these three pockets of encircled Ukrainian soldiers, where they will eventually surrender, or whether we will have here on absolutely needless dying, and the narrative that Ukraine can still win is so delusional that it upsets me that you read it sometimes in the New York Times and in the Washington Post, who are doing a disservice to their readers. I am very thankful for your programs and for the programs of Professor Glenn Deason, whom you've had in your program several times, but also the very clear analysis that we get from John Mersheimer, from Jeffrey Sachs, and many others, who are actually informing a growing public about the lies that the governments have been playing with us. Yes, Pascal.
I am very glad. Thank you for that overview. What I believe what we need to think about now, and the sooner the better, is how we not only come out of this crisis, but how we use this crisis of international relations and international law as a catalyst in order to build something that works a little bit better than the previous version. So just for an example, we see right now how certain states are just ignoring all and any kind of provisions, and it's the states who the loudest shout out rules-based order. So the United States, Israel, but also Germany and France and the UK and so on, just absolutely ignore some of the fundamental pillars. And we also see how civil society in many of these states is failing to hold their own systems to account. On the other hand, we also see how the trade system collapsed and the World Trade Organization was basically sabotaged. Now, if we take take that into account and we think about how to systematize what you just proposed, right? The punishing countries that just ignore international law. How could we build a mechanism that actually connects the World Trade Organization or whatever is going to come out of it with a stronger version of the Security Council, of an idea of how to prevent this systematic use of lethal force in the international realm? Do you have any idea, not just what should be built, but also how we could go about building it?
Well, unless you have a change of mindset, and still most people want to believe in the survivability of the current system. It takes, shall we say, temerity to cut yourself off from this belief that the United States will come back to observing international law. Because even when we talk about Barack Obama, who was made into a saint by the press in the narratives, and even the years of Biden and Blinken that were, shall we say, more elegant in their violation of international law. They were all violating the UN Charter systematically and undermining the system. The difference is that they did it in a more hypocritical way. They did not brazenly break the law and gloated about breaking the law. Because that is what I find particularly shocking in the context of the genocide in Gaza, for instance. The statements coming out from Trump, coming out from some of his ministers, coming out, of course, from the Israeli ministers, they are gloating over this genocide that they are performing. This is, shall we say, a reflection of the decadence of the West, the decadence of our Western civilization. And don't think that Latin Americans and Africans and Asians are not aware of it. I live in Geneva. I have close contacts with many ambassadors. I speak with members, the ones who do the work, the staffers of the various missions. I know how they're thinking, and they have a profound contempt for the West. It's just a question of time until they get their act together. And when there is a more effective union among BRICS countries and a more effective union among the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and then Belt and Road, et cetera, we're going to de-dollarize. That is one of the things that has to happen, that in the future, no one buys any more U.S. Treasury bonds, and that no one does trade in dollars. It is already in this direction, but of course it takes time to de-dollarize, to decouple from the dollar. As far as institution building, a substitute for the United Nations, I'm not quite ready to turn my back on the United Nations. I have hope in the International Court of Justice. I have very little hope in the International Criminal Court. But in the International Court of Justice, I know several of the judges personally, and I know they mean it. I know they mean well. and they are professionals, and they intend to see international law vindicated because we need it.
Mm.
I mean, what is civilization but law? One of the first things that civilization that differentiates civilization from the jungle is that we have rules, and then that we have mechanisms to monitor whether the rules are being observed, and then that we have tribunals. I have been an advocate of strengthening the regional court systems. The problem being is that the regional court systems, like everything human, have also been hijacked, have also been put in the service of Washington and Brussels. I mean, the European Court of Human Rights has adopted a number of decisions that are absolutely wrong on the law. Wrong. And same goes for the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Same thing goes for the Human Rights Committee, which I served many years as secretary. There has been a gradual politicization of the institutions. And that has, of course, the downside that if you bring a case that is not politically correct, your case is not even going to be registered.
Mm.
I mean, it's that bad. It's not in the power of the Secretariat to block the registration of a new case, but they do it. I know it. The Human Rights Committee does it. I know that the Committee on Economic Cultural Rights does it because I was the chief of that branch. When I was a UN lawyer, I was the chief of the whole petition system. And things have been hijacked. And that is something that I try to explain in this book, The Human Rights Industry, how the Human Rights Council, how the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, how the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, how the International Criminal Court, how the International Atomic Energy Agency essentially work for Washington and Brussels. And that, of course, has to end. But I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't want to say United Nations is inefficient and United Nations is sold out, so let's close the shop. We need international law, and we need a transitional period in which we can think of establishing a true international court of justice that has the means to implement its decisions. And that maybe could be tried in any event through the global South uniting in creating such a separate tribunal so that cases could be submitted not only to the International Court of Justice, but could be submitted, say, to the International Tribunal of the BRICS countries. And it is a matter that has obviously concerned many other thinkers. I already mentioned two of my favorite pundits, one being Jeffrey Sachs and the other one being John Mersheimer. And these people, these brains should be tapped in the creation of these bodies. And my shall we say, profound disappointment with the West after having worked, because I was a very proud American and a very proud, so proto-European, because I am proud of our culture. I'm proud of our literature and our music and everything that the Western civilization has brought forward. But I am very worried, as so was Eisenhower, that the military-industrial complex has replaced democracy, that they have a revolving door system whereby they feed themselves. They have a narrative that they control. They have the entire media in their hands, and money talks, and therefore they manage to brainwash the masses into accepting whatever nonsense or whatever injustice the government is doing. I mean, and this kind of hijacking of institutions has gone as far and as famously as to the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
You would think that one of the highlights of Western civilization is that we understood that war should be banned. Article 9 of the Constitution of Japan. Understand that on this planet in which we all live, we have to live together and we have to live in peace. So the idea of a price for persons who do the most for international understanding, for disarmament, for solidarity and cooperation, etc. Those are the people who should be getting the Nobel Peace Prize. But unfortunately, and it's not just from today or from yesterday, already in 1906, they gave the Nobel Peace Prize to President Theodore Roosevelt. That's scandalous. To give the Nobel Peace Prize to a notorious warmonger, to a notorious aggressor, to someone who believed in war as a primary, almost duty of government to wage war against others. And the decision 2 weeks ago of conferring this honor on Maria Corina Machado. Maria Corina Machado has been for decades a highly undemocratic figure trying to get the government of Venezuela overthrown by force in the old Latin American tradition of coup d'etats that actually gave Latin America such a bad name because we had so many military juntas and we had so many right-wing dictatorships that came to power undemocratically. I mean, she's been calling for U.S. military intervention in her own country so that she can become the president of the country and replace Nicolas Maduro. She asks for more sanctions against her people, although she knows from all the which has been published. We have the study of Mark Weisbrot and Jeffrey Sachs' collective punishment concerning Venezuela, And only for the year 2018, that's only 1 year, they estimated the excess deaths as a result of U.S. economic sanctions. They estimated it at 40,000. Now, that's only 1 year. So count 2019, 2020, 21, 22, count the COVID years where they were shut out, from any kind of COVID relief. It's shocking. And this woman is in favor of those unilateral coercive measures, which the General Assembly condemns every year. I mean, we just had the 33rd resolution of the General Assembly adopted overwhelmingly, demanding the lifting of the U.S. embargo against Cuba. But every year, there's a resolution on the illegality of unilateral coercive measures. And there will be one, I'm sure, adopted usually on the 16th, 17th of December. That's the date when a whole omnibus series of resolutions are adopted. And certainly this year will be adopted. The Human Rights Council adopts resolutions condemning economic sanctions. The Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights condemns such economic sanctions because of the adverse human rights impacts. And yet, the West, United States, United Kingdom, defend those lethal sanctions, defend them in the General Assembly and defend them in the Human Rights Council. So when you look at the voting record of many resolutions, you will realize who is on the right side of history and who is on the wrong side of history. And we and the West have placed ourselves in the wrong side of history.
I absolutely agree. And the hypocrisy of the entire thing is what adds insult to injury. But one of the things is that at the moment we are learning a couple of very important lessons. First of all, that of course, while you're right, that normal people want peace, and maybe 99% of the world population understand and aspire peace as an ultimate goal. We have about 1% or so of the global war party that actually proactively want war. They want to use war as a means to implement their grandiose schemes and so on. And these people have also learned how to phrase this stuff in, humanitarian words, like as Ronald Reagan apparently said, the iron fist of the United States will come covered in the velvet glove of humanitarianism. And that's just one aspect. The other one is, of course, how to use NGOs in order to do regime change and so on. I mean, the global war party's sophistication is very high. So the question to me then is, how do we equally improve the sophistication of international law, including the mechanisms, in order to counterbalance this? Now, direct question about somebody who knows the process. The United Nations General Assembly is way more democratic than the Security Council because one country, one vote. It's also much weaker because no enforcement mechanism, and its resolutions are only recommendations and so on. But can we use this avenue or also another avenue, let's say, amendments to the treaty, to the charter, or a separate multilateral treaty that could be organized within the General Assembly, but then signed with outside of it? Can we create mechanisms that could help us improve, to strip away this nonsense humanitarianism from the face of of how the United States and Israel and others are currently abusing these terms? What would be the most efficient way forward to create the amendments to what we already have?
Well, amendments to the charter are allowed pursuant to Article 109. But they must be approved by the Security Council, and the veto of the U.S. will be certain.
Yes.
That is why, notwithstanding all the good ideas of Hans von Sponeck, and Richard Falk in their fine book, Liberating the United Nations, Realism with Hope. Any kind of reform by way of amendment of the charter is at this moment not promising. I do think that we need, at least in a transitional period, a separate movement led by the BRIC countries. And there's something to it. You know, when you have considerable economic power, you have leverage, and then you can impose things. Let's face it, you know, when the United States, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union at the end of the Second World War decided unilaterally to try the Nazis. That was not the world organizing the International Military Tribunal for Nuremberg, but that was a handful of powerful states that said, we are going to try the Nazis. Now, the BRIC countries can establish their own BRICS tribunal to do a number of things. And say if BRIC countries were to agree that persons who have been convicted by an international tribunal of the BRIC countries, if they enter their jurisdiction, will be arrested, tried, and put in jail. That will be a message to the global North that their hegemony is over. And of course, we know that the West has been losing considerably in power and influence in the world at large. But there's still no tribunal that actually will convict them. The WTO tribunal, because obviously what in the field of commerce, the tariffs imposed by Trump are a gross violation of the general agreement on tariffs and trade, and on incompatible with the World Trade Organization system. And the only reason why there's been no progress in condemning the United States is that the United States unilaterally sabotages the system by refusing to name the judges. So the court has been essentially killed by the United States. That was a birth defect of the creation of this dispute tribunal of the WTO. But the BRICS countries could adopt also a quasi dispute tribunal for commercial matters, and then condemn the United States, and then the courts of India, the courts of China, the courts of South Africa, the courts of Brazil could act against the United States and sequester whatever properties are in their jurisdiction for payment. That's the sort of thing that the U.S. has done in the past using the Bretton Woods institutions. I mean, it's quite shocking to realize how in 1944 the United States established institutions that have nothing to do with the development of the world, but were only intended as an enforcement mechanism for decisions of the United States Department of the Treasury. It's these organizations essentially, and of course they're based in Washington, D.C., they shall we say, endorse, implement, facilitate the continued neocolonial control of the United States over the rest of the world. But again, your concern is a concern of reforming the United Nations and or establishing an alternative way in order to vindicate the validity of international law. The first step in that direction has already been taken, because I'm saying when I read the books that have been coming out in the past few years, it is clear to me that we are not alone. It's not only you and Glenn Beeson and Jeff Sachs and John Mersheimer. There's tons of people who are thinking the way we are thinking, but the carefully built system, built in conjunction with the military, industrial, financial complex, is entrenched. I mean, let's not ignore facts. I mean, they have enormous power, and anyone who has power doesn't want to give it up.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be easy. But the first war that we have to win is the information war. So programs like yours are crucial in educating people, where the scam is, and who are those who are pulling the strings in Washington, in London, in Paris, and in Berlin. And once we know what the situation is, once we lose our blue-eyed optimism, then we realize we are in trouble and that we must take concerted action. Then we need a leader. Who is the leader? Lula is, in my opinion, too old. So is Modi. I am hoping that a young figure in the BRICS movement will arise, then can lead the BRICS countries into an effective opposition to the control currently being wielded by the United States and by the European Union.
But we don't necessarily need one leader. What we need is a shared understanding of not only what's going wrong, but also the avenues to fix them, right? So I just want to come again back to this one. Like, we have now seen how, international law is more than just the United Nations, but the United Nations is a very effective place in order to debate it, discuss it, and develop it. And we would have the possibility of going, for example, the route of the TPNW, right? The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which was made international law and enshrined in the UN system against the will of the global North, even against the will of China and Russia, because they actually...
Yes, indeed.
Remember
that, yeah.
We have the TPNW route at the UN, at the General Assembly, to say, like, okay, we want a new norm, and we gonna get it, and we gonna push for it until we have it, and then we try to grow it. In the same sense, we could try to create amendments, and even though they will for now, not pass in the Security Council, if we prepare them and we grow them, we just need to wait until stuff changes, because we also know that the power of the global North and the US and so on is going down. It's only a question of time until an opening comes up. The other way would be to do, as you say, in BRICS, right? Meet somewhere in Kazan, 50, 60, 70 countries, and just decide this is what we're going to do, and we're going to have a judicial body, and then we all bind ourselves to do that. And we can do both at the same time. What would be your recommendation? Which mechanisms, multilateral and within the UN, are most promising? Also looking at the precedents that we have in the past, what gets results.
Well, the General Assembly has considerable power if it wants to use it.
Mm.
The General Assembly could already and should have adopted a Uniting for Peace resolution. And I am shocked that, notwithstanding the very clear path laid out by Craig McIver, how to do this, because he has explained it, how the General Assembly in the past has adopted Uniting for Peace resolutions and how that could be adopted today. But there's been no country that has thus far done it. I had great expectations when Gustavo Petro was at the General Assembly in September that he would actually do it. And there were rumors that he was going to do it, but in the end, he didn't. And but if it's not Gustavo Petro, it could be Ramaphosa of South Africa, or it could have been Lula of Brazil, or it could have been Modi. It is necessary to say, because we are all states parties to the Genocide Convention, and the Genocide Convention is first and foremost for the prevention of genocide. It's not for the punishment of genocide. That's ex post facto. That's far less interesting. It's a convention established to prevent genocide. You would have expected that any number of countries, members of the General Assembly and states parties to the Genocide Convention, would bring it to the General Assembly for a Uniting for Peace resolution. But in the same mechanism as Uniting for Peace resolution was adopted, why was it adopted? Because the United Nations Security Council was blocked. Now, since the United Nations Security Council will block any meaningful reform of the United Nations, by the same token, the General Assembly can say, we are going to assume that. And we are going to do what the Security Council refuses to do, Article 12 of the UN Charter. And I think that is a way that must be tried. And what you need is, of course, political will. And I ask myself, which is the country that will show that political will? I mean, maybe we have to do a bit of footwork in Indonesia, the biggest Muslim country in the world with 300 million human beings. This is a big country. And they should make their weight felt in the General Assembly, and simultaneously through the BRICS, we should be trying to meet a parallel system, if you want, or an advisory system that would complement the work of the General Assembly. I am not giving up hope that the General Assembly will do these things, but judging by the blah blah statements that we get from politicians, including from Lula. I mean, I'm also disappointed with Lula. I'm not sure how we're actually going to get there. So I go back to my all-purpose proposal to educate, to get the information out so that a kind of worldwide grassroots movement converges, and then demands of their politicians that they do something to save international law and to save humanity from all the provocations and all the escalations that are going on right now. We started the interview with the totally illegal extrajudicial executions that the United States is perpetrating in the Caribbean and in the Pacific, etc. And there again, it is so brazen. It is so public. That's something that really shocks me. In the past, something like that would be done covertly.
Yeah.
It would be, you would have plausible deniability. You would say, "Oh no, that's fake news. We're not doing that sort of thing." What shocks me is that Trump is gloating
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
doing this, and that they don't care about the long-term corrosive impact of such actions, and that sooner or later is going to boomerang against us. Sooner or later, we are going to have to pay the consequences, because international law functions when everybody agrees that it is good for us,
Yep.
that it makes sense.
Yep.
But if the United States breaks international law systematically and gets away with it, then other countries that we like less are going to follow suit. And they're going to do it, and they will expect to get away with it. So this is a spiral downwards, is what I call retrogression
Yeah.
in international law, and retrogression in our perception
Yep.
of civilization, our perception of human rights and human dignity.
Yeah. And the problem is not that international law can be broken and is being broken. The problem is when it's being systematically broken, and broken a lot. That's the moment when it starts to
I
seriously
mean, the
collapse.
Romans had the.
They did, but one more question, and it's just,
Yeah.
if you were a multi-billionaire and if you established a Nobel Peace Prize thingy, like the Nobel Peace Prize, but with $1 billion going to the winner's country, how would you set it up in order to incentivize them to ameliorate the system? How could we evaluate whether somebody deserves a international law 1 billion prize for their country or not?
For the country, again, I hate to equate law or human rights or peace with money or with a price. I never like to put a dollar sign next to an honor. I think that most awards are not so much for the recipients, but they are an expression of geopolitical interest on the part of the award giver.
Yes.
And it's the award giver that is making a spectacle and using an individual, shall we say, a quantité négligeable, like Maria Corina Machado, in order to put up a show about the need to have regime change in Venezuela. It's complete corruption of the last will and testament of Alfred Nobel. Um, as far as having a different kind of award, what I would like to see is not a Pulitzer Prize for journalists, and I must confess that there are, in my opinion, many Pulitzer Prize winners who essentially have excelled in fake news, fake history, and fake law, who have done actually a disservice for journalism. Because if I was going to give an award to a journalist, I would give it to Julian Assange, someone who actually has done a service to humanity by making information available and accessible, information that has been wrongly withheld from the public. That would be a sensible award. But right now, the whole system of awards is largely corrupted. And I was thinking of the Karls Prize, the European Karls Prize, this year, that went to, of all people, Ursula von der Leyen. It's so laughable, and it is so. I hate to say this on television or on a video, but it is not unlike a form of onanism. It's a form of self satisfying, self serving, self congratulatory, which is to me, as a human being, is an insult to my intelligence, and is an insult to the intelligence of everybody else. But then you have these politicians who will go to the event and applaud it. It is actually a yet another symptom of the decadence of the West. But let's,
No,
one of my favorite Latin authors is Juvenal. Juvenalis, with his 16 satires. And the 16 satires showed, even then, how the super wealthy Roman society was already then corrupted, and how injustices occurred right and left. And happily, he was not banished like Ovidius was banished to Ponto in his days. But um, when I see the corruption in our system, I also have the thought that maybe it was not much better in prior centuries. It's just we didn't know much about it. And the added value of living in the 21st century is that if we want to be informed, we can be informed.
Yeah.
If we want to be informed, there are plenty of reliable sources of information that we can access still, until the European Union or other totalitarian constructs prohibit it. But we can fight back. We can push back. And as I say, ultimately, I have a sense of hope, because the Ukraine war, if nothing else, has shown that the arrogance of NATO has not been rewarded by dismantling Russia and dismembering Russia, but that it is possible to push back against this hegemonial aspiration of NATO. And as this, shall we say, corrupt construct is slowly but surely dismantled, maybe there will be room for a revival of those principles that were very much alive in 1945. As I say, when you read what was written by Ralph Bunche and by Eleanor Roosevelt and so many in the years 1945 through 1953 or so, there was such an enthusiasm for building a world that was more just and that was more balanced. And there are people who did believe in international law. And as I always speak about the spirituality of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I think it is a beautiful, beautiful instrument. And we should somehow put ourselves in the mindset of those people and somehow try to revitalize all of those values and reaffirm our commitment to the Charter, as I say, as the only world constitution that we have, even if it is not immediately implementable.
Yeah, and we will get back to it. I mean, that's for sure, because the one thing that's clear is that the entire world, even including the US and China and Russia, they are not actually questioning the UN Charter. That's the one thing everybody agrees. The UN Charter is a good thing. The question to me is how we enlist the forces and powers of capitalism in order to reinforce the mechanisms we've already built, and then circumvent the circumventions that have been created by countries like the US and the West in general, in order to actually get to the aspired goals. But we will keep thinking about this. Alfred, people who want to find your writings, where should they go?
Well, you have my website, www.alfreddezayas.com. You also have my blog called the Human Rights Corner, which is www.desayasalfred WordPress.
Mm-hmm.
I am frequently on X. I write tweets almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
I write regularly for Counterpunch. So if you do Alfred de Zayas Counterpunch, you'll get a whole series of my articles. I also write for Covert Action. You're probably familiar with Covert Action. I have an article in it yesterday, which I also sent to you. You may want to send that if anybody asks. Send that newest article in Covert Action, which I published yesterday, which has a lot of footnotes and a lot of indications what to read. But basically, I would like to focus on my human rights trilogy, my book, Building a Just World Order, written 2021, with its 25 principles of international order. The second book in the trilogy, Countering Mainstream Narratives, published 2022, and The Human Rights Industry, published in 2023. And I'm now preparing a new edition of the human rights industry, because of all three books, that's the one that struck a vein and that or struck a nerve and got more people riled up. And so when you realize that the institutions created to protect and to promote our rights have been largely hijacked, that these institutions sometimes do the opposite of what they should be doing. quis custodiet ipsos custodes, that, if anything else, would move you to action, because you realize, I've been taken for a ride. I've been lied to.
Yeah.
I've been abused, and I'm pushing back.
Yeah.
And that book, I think, and I know it's being used in several universities. I know it's being used by a professor in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who just wrote me recently about it. So I think it's a long process in order to save ourselves from the situation that our leaders put us into.
Yeah.
But again, you are doing a great
Because,
contribution. I mean,
you know,
I watch you regularly.
thank you.
I mean, and some of your programs have been so fantastic. And I only wish that millions and millions and millions of people watch it.
Thank you. But the challenge we are facing is that we need to save ourselves from ourselves. But that's what international law is actually about. That's the entire core of the enterprise. So Alfred, I thank you for your insights, and we will talk again. Alfred de Zayas, thank you very much for your
Great pleasure. Thank you, Pascal.